Have you ever witnessed a moment where an entire room of well-dressed professionals, managers, translators, assistants, stood frozen in failure while the only person with the answer was the one nobody paid attention to? That's exactly what happened inside the glittering lobby of the Regency Grand Hotel, a five-star palace of marble and glass where reputations were made, broken, and whispered about in every corner. That morning, the air was thick with tension. A tall Japanese woman stood motionless at the reception desk. Her name was Ms. Aiko Tanaka, and though few in the room realized it, she wasn't just any traveler. She was a millionaire business magnate, CEO of Tanaka Global Networks, a powerhouse in Asian tech. Yet at that moment, surrounded by baffled translators and a hotel manager with clenched fists, she looked like an island in the middle of an ocean of misunderstanding. For nearly 40 minutes, no one had been able to understand her. "Unbelievable," snapped Claudia Whitmore, the manager of the Regency Grand, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. She paced in front of the reception desk, her stiletto heels cracking loudly against the floor Denise Washington had polished only minutes earlier. "We have three translators here, and not one of you can understand her? This is becoming a humiliation." The translators exchanged awkward glances. One specialized in Mandarin, another in Korean, the third in Thai. But Aiko Tanaka wasn't speaking any of those languages. She had spoken softly, elegantly, only in her native Japanese, each word falling like drops of water into a void. Behind her, her assistant tapped frantically on his phone, likely canceling million-dollar meetings and rescheduling private jets. Time was money, and the hotel was losing both. Meanwhile, Denise Washington, the 32-year-old maid, was on her knees in the corner of the lobby, scrubbing the Italian marble floor with a rag and bucket. She was practically invisible to everyone. That was something Denise had mastered after 6 years in this place, how to blend into the background while wealthy guests stormed past her without a glance. But unlike the rest of them, Denise wasn't just cleaning the floor. She was watching, observing. And something in her eyes suggested she understood far more than anyone else suspected. Claudia threw her hands up dramatically. "If we don't resolve this in the next 15 minutes, I'll cancel the presidential suite reservation myself." Imagine the financial damage. This woman owns one of the largest tech firms in Asia. If she leaves dissatisfied, our reputation is finished. The young receptionist whispered to a colleague, "If she walks out, we're done. It'll be an international scandal." That's when Aiko finally spoke again. Her voice calm, refined, but tinged with frustration. She gestured with precision, her tone quickening. The translators froze. They had nothing. Sandra, impatient, arrogant, red-faced with embarrassment, rolled her eyes. "God, this is ridiculous," Claudia hissed. "This is America. If she wants to stay here, she should learn English." And that's when I felt it, reading this scene, imagining myself there. The kind of burn in the chest that only comes when arrogance masquerades as professionalism. It's a familiar burn, isn't it? Watching someone with power mock another human being for no reason except difference. Denise felt it too. Her hand tightened around the mop handle. She had felt this sting before, many times. Years ago, she'd defended a Latina colleague at her old job, a woman humiliated for not speaking perfect English. Denise had been fired for it. And the bitter irony? Denise herself spoke 5 languages fluently, a skill she had deliberately hidden when she took this low-level maid job out of desperation. She had once been a volunteer interpreter for humanitarian organizations. She had once stood proudly in rooms where language barriers broke hearts. But here she had been forced to swallow her pride and become invisible. Claudia's voice cut through the lobby again, louder now because guests had gathered, curious about the scene. "Look at this! One of our most expensive suites, booked by a woman who can't even ask for a towel." The concierge whispered, horrified. "Please lower your voice, Miss Whitmore. People are watching." But Claudia was relentless. "No! Enough with political correctness. This is my hotel, and in my hotel, people speak English. If they can't, they don't belong here." Her words were poison, dripping arrogance across the marble lobby. And at that moment, Denise froze, because she realized something no one else in that grand room had noticed. She understood the words. For years, Denise had studied Japanese quietly. She had volunteered at a community center that helped Asian immigrants. She had poured her evenings into learning kanji, practicing grammar, and memorizing cultural customs. She had grown to love the language deeply, not as a requirement, but as an act of compassion. And now, standing in her maid's uniform, holding a dripping cloth, Denise was the only person in that hotel who could break the silence. But should she? Her mind flashed back to all the times she'd been punished for stepping out of line, for speaking up when she wasn't supposed to. She remembered managers snapping, "Stick to your job, Denise," as if scrubbing floors was the only thing she was capable of. Yet something shifted inside her. It wasn't resignation anymore. It was determination. Her eyes met Aiko's across the lobby. For a brief, electric second, two women, one powerful but humiliated, the other invisible but fluent, shared a silent understanding. Denise dropped her cloth. Slowly, she rose to her feet. Her movements were deliberate, calculated, as if she had rehearsed this very moment for years. "Excuse me," she said softly. Heads turned. Claudia whipped around, outraged. "What are you doing? Get back to your cleaning duties immediately." But Denise didn't look at her. She looked only at Aiko. And in flawless Japanese, with the delicate Kyoto accent she had worked years to perfect, she spoke. "Tanaka-sama, gomen nasai. Watashi ga tasukemasu. Madame Tanaka, forgive us. I will help you." The silence that followed was deafening. Aiko blinked, her eyes widening in astonishment. Relief washed over her face. "Anata, Nihongo ga dekiru no," she whispered. "You speak Japanese?" Denise bowed her head slightly, modestly. "Sukoshi daki," she replied. Only a little. But everyone in the room could tell her mastery was far beyond a little. Claudia's mouth hung open. The translators exchanged embarrassed glances. They had failed for hours, and now a maid had solved the crisis in seconds. It was as if the entire hierarchy of the hotel had flipped upside down in one heartbeat. And I'll be honest, this part gives me chills every time I tell it. Because isn't it always like this? The world underestimates people who don't fit its shallow boxes, until one day the truth bursts out and leaves everyone speechless. Claudia sputtered. "That's impossible. You're a maid. How could you?" But she never finished her sentence. Because Aiko Tanaka, the millionaire woman who had been ignored, insulted, and humiliated for 2 hours straight, suddenly turned to Denise and spoke in Japanese with genuine admiration. "Doko de mananda no? Anata no hatsuon wa totemo utsukushi." Where did you learn? Your pronunciation is so beautiful. And in that instant, everyone in the Regency Grand realized they had underestimated the wrong woman. The silence in the lobby didn't just last a few seconds. It stretched, thick and heavy, until you could almost hear the heartbeat of every person in that grand room. A maid had just spoken perfect Japanese to the woman 3 professional translators had failed to reach. And in that silence, power shifted. Aiko Tanaka, dignified and elegant, looked at Denise as if she had found an oasis in a desert. Her lips curved slightly, almost into a smile. But Claudia Whitmore, the manager, was boiling. "You!" Claudia snapped, her voice trembling with disbelief and fury. "How dare you interfere? You're not authorized to speak to guests. You're a cleaner." That word, cleaner, spat like poison. I have to pause here because isn't it strange how certain people cling to titles to strip others of worth? Claudia saw a maid's uniform and assumed incompetence. She couldn't imagine that brilliance, education, or talent could exist beneath it. And that's the tragedy of arrogance. It blinds. Denise, however, didn't flinch. She bowed her head slightly toward Aiko and continued speaking Japanese, her voice soft but firm. "Watashi wa koko no shigoto wa tanjun desu ga, anata no mondai o kaiketsu dekimasu." My work here may be simple, but I can solve your problem. The assistant at Aiko's side gasped in astonishment. He whispered to his boss, clearly impressed, while hastily pulling out his notepad, as though Denise had become the official interpreter of the moment. Claudia stomped her heel against the marble. "This is outrageous. Miss Tanaka, please ignore her. She's nobody. I'll have security remove her this instant." But Aiko finally spoke. In clear Japanese, she gestured toward Denise and said something that made Claudia's face freeze. Kanojo dake ni hanashimasu. I will only speak to her. The translators exchanged defeated looks. The receptionist's jaw dropped. Guests murmured audibly. Denise swallowed hard. But inside, a fire was igniting. For years, she had been treated like furniture in that hotel. Invisible, voiceless. But here, in front of everyone, the millionaire guest had chosen her over all the professionals. Impossible, Claudia muttered, panic creeping into her tone. She can't, she won't. This is my hotel. But even as she spoke, Aiko turned toward Denise with a calm dignity that cut through the chaos. Switching briefly to English, she said, "You help me." It wasn't perfect English, but the message was crystal clear. She trusted the maid. And let me tell you something personal. When someone overlooked finally gets chosen, there's a shift you can almost feel in your bones. It's the kind of justice we all secretly crave. The invisible person stepping into the light, not by force, but because truth can't stay hidden forever. Denise bowed slightly. "Yes, Ms. Tanaka." Then in Japanese she asked, "What do you need resolved?" Aiko explained rapidly, and Denise translated smoothly for the stunned staff. It turned out the issue wasn't complicated at all. Aiko's reservation had been mishandled. The suite she required for high-level international negotiations hadn't been prepared correctly. She needed specific accommodations for security and privacy, details she had emailed weeks ago, requests the hotel had ignored. Within 5 minutes, Denise had clarified everything. What hours of translators and managers couldn't solve, she had handled effortlessly. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Claudia wasn't ready to lose. Her face pale with rage, she barked, "Enough! Miss Washington, you are officially suspended for insubordination. Pack your things and leave immediately." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Fire her? For saving the hotel from an international scandal? Denise didn't look shaken. She simply straightened her back, placed the mop aside, and faced Claudia with calm eyes. For the first time in years, she wasn't shrinking into invisibility. "I understand," Denise said softly, "but before I go, I will finish helping our guest. Respect is not negotiable." A murmur of approval swept among the onlookers. It was subtle, but people were beginning to see the contrast. One woman fueled by arrogance and fear, another guided by dignity. And then, the twist no one expected. Aiko Tanaka, who until then had spoken mostly in Japanese, suddenly switched to flawless English. Her voice was sharp, steady, and cold. "The only scandal here is your behavior, Ms. Whitmore." The entire lobby froze. "You speak English?" Claudia stammered, color draining from her face. "Fluently," Aiko replied, her tone carrying the weight of someone used to commanding boardrooms. "I understood every insult, every word of disdain you hurled at me. For 2 hours I listened as you disrespected me, disrespected my culture, and humiliated your own staff." It was like thunder rolling through the marble halls. Guests gasped. The translators looked at the floor, ashamed. Claudia staggered. I didn't know. I didn't mean—" "You meant every word," Aiko cut her off. "And I have proof. This entire time my phone has been recording." The revelation struck like lightning. Aiko pulled out her phone, screen still glowing with the recording app. Every poisonous word Claudia had uttered was saved, ready to be sent to media outlets, hotel executives, international boards. Panic consumed Claudia's face. She grabbed at excuses. "That's illegal. You can't record me." Marcus Johnson, the senior concierge and one of the only black employees in management, stepped forward. His voice was calm, professional, but edged with steel. "Actually, Ms. Whitmore, in public spaces such as this lobby, there is no expectation of privacy. Furthermore, all hotel security cameras recorded this entire interaction." Claudia's knees nearly buckled. And I have to say, this part of the story always makes me smile. Because isn't it beautiful when arrogance collapses under the weight of its own arrogance? When someone who believed themselves untouchable suddenly realizes the walls are closing in? Aiko continued mercilessly. "I am not just a guest. I am a member of the International Tourism Board. My recommendation influences contracts worth tens of millions annually. And your conduct today has shown me exactly how this establishment treats diversity." The staff looked horrified. The junior receptionist nearly fainted. Claudia whispered, Please, don't destroy me. But it was too late. Aiko wasn't finished. She turned to Denise. Ms. Washington, I have researched you during this ordeal. I know your background, your education, your languages. You are wasted here. Would you consider working for me? The lobby went silent again. Denise's breath caught in her throat. For 6 years, she had been invisible. Now, in front of everyone, she was being offered a chance that could change her life forever. And honestly, can you imagine what that feels like? To be discarded, mocked, and underestimated for years, only to have your brilliance finally recognized in the most public way possible? Denise bowed deeply. I would be honored. Claudia crumbled. Her phone rang sharply. It was her regional director. She answered with trembling hands only to hear the inevitable. Termination, effective immediately. Her career was over. The lobby was buzzing now. Guests whispered excitedly. Employees looked at Denise with newfound respect. The maid had become the hero. Aiko gestured gracefully toward the elevators. Shall we discuss details upstairs? She asked Denise, switching seamlessly back to Japanese. Denise nodded. For the first time, she didn't feel like a maid. She felt like herself, the woman she had always been, the woman nobody saw. And as the two of them walked toward the presidential suite, leaving Claudia pale and broken behind, one thing became clear. The hierarchy of the Regency Grand Hotel had been shattered in one unforgettable morning. Because sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one the world tries hardest to ignore. 6 months later, the skyline outside Denise Washington's window glittered like 1,000 diamonds. She was no longer in the lobby kneeling with a rag and a bucket. She was seated on the executive floor of Tanaka Global Networks behind a mahogany desk with an assistant standing at her door. The nameplate on her desk bore the title, Director of Intercultural Relations, and sometimes she still had to pinch herself to believe it. The same woman who had once scrubbed the marble floors of the Regency Grand Hotel was now leading diversity programs across 12 international branches, mediating million-dollar negotiations between Asian and American executives, and flying across the world as Aiko Tanaka's right hand. But perhaps the sweetest part was not the salary or the office view. It was the fact that finally she was seen. She remembered that day in the lobby like a scar and a blessing. Claudia Whitmore screaming about English and power, while Denise had quietly unlocked the one skill nobody expected from her. That single act had changed everything. Across town, Claudia's life had collapsed. Once a manager who strutted through hotel lobbies with her heels clicking like gunfire, she now lived in a small, crumbling apartment. Her designer suits long since pawned off. Her name whispered with disdain. After Aiko Tanaka released the recordings of her insults, she became a symbol, not of hospitality but of arrogance and prejudice. No five-star hotel would touch her resume. She folded clothes in a department store where customers recognized her from the viral scandal and whispered, "That's her, the manager who humiliated the millionaire guest." Claudia kept her head down, knowing the world never forgets arrogance caught on camera. I can admit that a small part of me feels pity because the real punishment is not losing a job, but realizing too late that you chose cruelty when kindness would have cost nothing. Meanwhile, the Grand Hotel had transformed. Its new management implemented diversity training, promoted minority employees to leadership positions, and adopted Denise's cultural sensitivity program, the very one she designed with Aiko's support. And guess who oversaw those reforms? Denise herself. She returned not as a maid but as a consultant, walking through the same lobby where she had once been invisible. Staff who used to ignore her now greeted her with nervous respect. Some apologized, others lowered their eyes in shame. The irony was sharp and beautiful. The woman they had dismissed as just a cleaner had become the standard they now followed. One afternoon, Denise met Maria, a young Latina maid who spoke 4 languages fluently but was ignored by supervisors. Denise saw herself in Maria's tired eyes and offered her an internship at Tanaka Global. Maria cried in disbelief. "Nobody has ever believed in me before," she whispered. Denise smiled and told her, "I know. That's why I'm here." That was the heart of her new power. The cycle of invisibility breaks the moment someone decides to lift another person up. Denise was not just climbing higher for herself, she was pulling others with her. At a charity gala, Denise stood beside Aiko as they announced a multi-million-dollar scholarship fund for immigrant women pursuing careers in linguistics and business. Cameras flashed and applause filled the ballroom. In her speech, Denise declared, "The world told me I was invisible, but invisibility is a lie. Talent doesn't disappear just because others refuse to see it. We all have gifts, and when we honor each other's voices, no matter the language, we create a world where nobody's left behind." The audience rose to their feet, clapping until tears shone in their eyes. Later, over tea, Aiko said with a smile, "If Claudia had treated me with respect from the beginning, I might never have discovered you." Denise laughed softly. "Then maybe she did me a favor." Sometimes our enemies unintentionally push us toward the destiny we were meant to claim. That evening, Denise returned home to her family. Her young niece ran into her arms. She cooked dinner, laughed, and remembered the echo of Claudia's voice shouting, "She's just a cleaner." And she smiled because she had proven once and for all that no one is just anything. The next morning, social media still buzzed with stories about her rise. Documentaries chronicled her journey. Her inbox overflowed with speaking invitations. But Denise did not care about fame. She cared about the quiet revolution that had begun the moment she chose to stand up, drop her rag, and speak. And maybe that is what makes this ending so powerful. Claudia Whitmore's downfall was dramatic, yes, but the true victory was Denise Washington's rise, not out of spite, but out of courage, compassion, and the decision to no longer hide her light. That is the kind of ending that should make you feel furious at arrogance, inspired by resilience, and deeply happy that justice at last was served. Because sometimes the world does not need another hero in a suit. It just needs a maid brave enough to speak in the right language at the right time.